Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video we'll be talking about Torghast. I've talked to a lot of you guys either on streams or I've talked to you guys either in game, and quite a lot of people this first week are actually kind of maybe struggling with Torghast. Torghast is something you will want to do on a weekly basis. You will want to get through different layers, and right now 2 rooms available up to a maximum of layer 3. If you complete layer 3 in both of those rooms and turn in a quest to Bolvar, you'll get the most amount of soul ash for the week. And future weeks are going to have layers increased as we get better gear. But for a lot of you, even layer 3 is finding itself to be kind of challenging. So in this video, I want to give you guys some of my tips of what I do for Torghast, whether it is for my main, whether it is for my alt, when it comes to trying to progress through it. What are some of the tips you can implement yourself in order to have an easier time reaching your weekly cap of Torghast? In a way, these aren't going to be some crazy big brain tips. These are going to be very basic, but even basic lessons can go a long way when it comes to completing a Torghast for the week. Remember, right now Blizzard has us only go up to a maximum of layer 3, which isn't even all that difficult. And if you're struggling with layer 3, layer 5 and layer 6 and beyond are going to be extra difficult for you. I've done a lot of Torghast testing back in the beta, and these are going to be my tips from the beta. First advice of Torghast would be to stick to your guns and play with abilities that are very consistent. I know Torghast is full, and I mean literally chock full of different abilities that you might be able to mess with, maybe different combinations that could be fun and interesting. But if you're trying to get your weekly runs with Torghast, I would say stick with abilities that are going to be best for you. I know you might think, oh, something looks cool or something looks legendary, something looks like an epic ability in terms of the rarities, and you might just click it immediately. But first take a look at the abilities and think about how they could help you for that final boss fight. Because eventually, after the full run, it all comes down to you versus the boss. How are you going to be able to beat the boss and start taking steps towards that eventual big confrontation? For me, that means I'll take abilities for my rogue that will probably amp my Covenant ability, which is actually quite a good portion of my damage output. I'll buff anything that buffs my base damage, even though there might be lower quality item abilities, but buffing the damage of my dispatch from a rogue is going to be important down the line. The more dispatches I can get out inside of a boss run, the more damage I'll put out. It's no brainer. For the most part, I avoid experimental builds, and while as Enhancement Shaman, if you get the anima ability where you drop a totem, you can drop another totem, and while having 4 Spirit Link totems around you would be really cool to see, I don't think they end up being as helpful as totems simply granting you extra damage. So I'll go with something very more tame as abilities, and then I'll try maybe to combo into those tame powers. Tip number 2 is to do a full clear of every floor. I know you might have just got defeated by the layer 3, or I guess in the future it would be layer 6, or however many layers Blizzard is going to cap it at. And while you're trying to rush back to the boss as soon as possible, it might be in your best interest to clear the full floor. That means destroy every single phylactery, interact with every single soul because those give you primary stats which stack up towards the final boss. Eliminate every rare in the floor, eliminate every enemy, even the Morads, because you never know who might give you some anima abilities. Solve every puzzle and explore every nook and cranny of the lair. You are going to be able to amass either anima abilities from defeating all these things or breaking all those phylacteries, but also you'll get Phantasma, and Phantasma converts itself into anima abilities. Now it's still very RNG what the vendor will have on the actual shop when it comes to your anima abilities, but at least being able to buy specific abilities to kind of accent whatever build you're cobbling together might give you a bit better chances down the line for the final boss when it comes to that final fight. It's better than nothing, and while it is very slow, it can go a long way towards making sure that once you get to the final boss, you do defeat him, at least. Third tip is to take your time, and I mean, sounds like tip number 2, but tip number 3 is to take your time with your character. Take your time with cooldowns. Take your time with crowd control. There is no time limit in Torghast. I think Blizzard at some point was going to add that if you finish the floors quickly, you would get a bigger bonus at the end, so maybe people would start doing speed runs at a later time. If you're someone trying to do some Torghast on your character, take your time. You can actually literally wait for every single trash bag for all your cooldowns to come up if you so wish. I mean, it's kind of cheese, but it's Torghast. It's punishing. It's not really going to give you too many second chances. So you might as well come in fully prepared head to toe. Take your time with Torghast and utilize your crowd control in order to get through enemies, especially if it's going to be long fights. That's a lot better than rushing ahead and losing your head in the process. Tip number 4 is utilize these followers. So from time to time on different layers, you'll get different followers that you might be able to do mini quests for. These followers will follow you, and they will even try to fight for you. At some point during the alpha and the beta, these followers were actually nuts, and some of them were insane in the damage output. Those have been trying to scale them up and down, and right now they are relatively weak. However, these followers can take off some much needed aggro off of you. These guys are very combative, and when you get near enemies, they will go in fist first. So if you do want to utilize them in order to hold aggro away from you, so you can, split the attention from a different trash bag, that might be in your best interest. One of the things that I've done in Torghast every single run is try to hold on to my followers for as long as I humanly can. So while I can give that Necrolord their sword that they lost in Torghast years ago and get my anima power, I'll actually hold on to that guy and I'll remember where the sword is. I'll go finish the full floor utilizing that follower to do even the smallest amounts of damage, but mostly aggro holding from time to time in order to deal with the trash bag easiest, and then I'll turn in the follow reward at the very end of the run, which is something a lot of people used to do back in the beta, and it can give you a little bit of that edge sometimes. Last bit of advice is going to sound like cheap advice, but playing with other people is going to make Torghast runs generally easier. Now I know it's just one of those things that people will tell you doing things with groups or with friends is a lot more fun or easier because you have company, but in Torghast you actually have different anima abilities per class. So diversifying or even playing the same class can give you so many options. So many abilities for a variety of classes are meant for groups. And when you're running solo, you just can't take advantage of them. But when you're running with groups in LFG, guildies, with friends, it just gives you so many more possibilities. Not only does everyone get their own anima powers, which can give them their own big growth, but you also can go with tank groups, healer groups, 2-man healer DPS groups if you want to, but all those anima powers that might be able to help in those group situations are also going to be usable when it comes to playing with groups. And that's the biggest advantage. Now, Torghast doesn't necessarily make itself easier to play with groups because the mobs will scale depending on how many people there are. And if everybody's down all the time, you do have only a set amount of deaths to work with. But having more variety of anima abilities will give you that slight edge in order to achieve the final layer that you need. So open up LFG, ask some guildies, ask some friends if they want to get their Torghast done for the week, and try to do it with groups if all the other methods simply do not work. Torghast is an interesting beast. It's an interesting bit of content that was added in this expansion. It does have a play in terms of crafting your legendaries, and while it doesn't seem like your dungeons or raids, the PvP, it doesn't seem like the typical endgame content with all the RNG involved with anima powers and the way that it's structured. I do very much enjoy it, and I hope you guys do too. Blizzard definitely put in a lot of time and they created a really interesting and fun system. Every single run in Torghast is different in one way or another. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully these tips help you guys out, and I'll see all of you in another video.